For decades, there's been one number that defined retirement success: $1 million. You know the one. It was the dream, the ultimate finish line. But what if I told you that dream is now, well, it's a trap? Today, we're going to break down the hard truth about why that magic number just doesn't cut it anymore and what you really need to be aiming for instead. Let's get right into it.
You know, for over 40 years, the whole idea of becoming a millionaire, that was the absolute peak of financial success. It meant comfort, security, traveling, a golden parachute after a lifetime of hard work. It was literally woven into the fabric of our financial culture. And this really says it all. It wasn't just about the money. It was a status symbol. It was the signal that, hey, you did everything right, and now you can finally relax. An entire generation built their whole financial plan around hitting this one single monumental goal.
But I've got to share a brutal truth with you. Something your financial advisor might be a little too hesitant to say out loud. As we barrel towards 2026, that dream, that gold standard, it's officially a thing of the past. The rules of the game have completely changed.
In fact, that $1 million target has done a complete 180. It's gone from being a symbol of wealth to what the source material for this calls the middle-class trap. So instead of giving you security, it's actually creating a false sense of it, leaving thousands of retirees dangerously unprepared for the reality of our modern economy.
So what is this trap, really? It's hitting that $1 million mark, thinking you're totally safe, and then, bam, you discover your savings can't even come close to supporting the life you planned for. It's a devastating surprise that's becoming way too common. The finish line moved, and most people didn't even get the memo.
So how did this happen? How did it happen so fast? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a perfect storm of three powerful forces that are actively, right now, dismantling the value of your retirement savings. Let's break down these three killers.
Okay, so first up, we've got the silent thief, inflation, which has just been aggressively eating away at the value of every dollar you have. Second, the single biggest expense that most people tragically underestimate, healthcare. And third, there's a big tax shift looming on the horizon that could take a much bigger bite out of your nest egg than you think.
Think about this for a second. $1 million back in 1990, it had the buying power of almost $3 million today. I mean, that is a staggering loss of value. It means that every time you go to the grocery store, every single time you fill up your car, your retirement savings are effectively buying you less and less and less.
But you know, as bad as inflation is, there's an even bigger monster lurking in the shadows for that $1 million nest egg. The source calls it the true $1 million killer, and it is the catastrophic cost of healthcare in retirement.
Okay, take a deep breath and look at this number, $315,000. That's the average amount a couple retiring soon can expect to need just for their medical bills. And we're not talking about anything crazy here. This is just premiums, copays, prescriptions. That's almost a third of your entire $1 million portfolio. Poof, gone. Wiped out by healthcare costs alone.
And here's the part that's truly terrifying. That huge number, that $315,000, it doesn't even include the possibility of long-term care. If you or your spouse ends up needing assisted living or a nursing home, your entire $1 million portfolio could be gone in just a handful of years.
And believe it or not, it doesn't stop there. On top of inflation and healthcare, you still got to deal with the tax man. Look, if your $1 million is sitting in a traditional 401k or an IRA, you have to remember, it's not all your money. A pretty big chunk of that pie already belongs to the government, and with tax laws set to change, that slice could get a whole lot bigger.
So the bottom line is, even the old rules about how to spend your money are totally broken. For decades, right, the 4% rule was the gold standard for withdrawals. But in today's economy, with this kind of inflation and all the market volatility, sticking to that old advice creates a very, very real risk of outliving your money.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem. It's pretty clear the old number is a trap, and the old rules just don't work. I know it sounds like a bleak picture, but understanding the problem, that's always the first step to finding a solution. So, where do we go from here?
Well, it's time to define the new magic number.
First things first, we have to just completely erase that million-dollar goal from our minds. It is no longer the benchmark for success. In fact, clinging to it is like clinging to outdated, dangerous advice. It's time for a brand new target.
And this, right here, this leads us to the single most important question of this entire explainer. If that old goal is totally obsolete, what should we be aiming for to have a truly comfortable and, a secure retirement in 2026 and beyond?
And there it is. The new target for most people is actually a lot closer to 1.75 million, with a lot of folks needing a nest egg somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million. And I know that number can feel overwhelming, maybe even a little demoralizing. But hang on, because the solution isn't just about saving more.
This brings us to the final and I think the most empowering part of this whole discussion. Because getting to retirement safely isn't just about the size of your portfolio anymore. It's about having the right strategy to protect it from all those threats we just talked about. This is the key takeaway. You really can't just save your way out of this problem. You have to get strategic. The game has totally shifted from just pure saving and accumulation to intelligent protection, guarding what you've worked so hard to build against taxes, inflation, and those scary market crashes.
So what does that actually look like? Well, it starts with getting really smart about your taxes. Instead of just randomly pulling money out, you need a plan to do it tax efficiently. That can involve things like Roth conversions to get ahead of that 2026 tax shift. It also means you absolutely must have a plan to shield your money from market downturns, so one bad year doesn't wipe out decades of saving. It's about building a defense against the very threats we've just laid out.
Look, the rules of retirement have fundamentally changed. The old gold standard has failed, and relying on it could honestly cost you everything. So the final question is really this. You've worked your entire life to build your savings. Is your plan, is it truly ready for the realities of 2026?
And of course, just remember, this is all for educational purposes. Everyone's financial situation is deeply personal, so it's always so important to talk with a qualified professional financial advisor to create a plan that's tailored specifically to you and your goals.